Welcome, everyone, to our special Wednesday call. I am so excited. We have Dr. Christina Chambreau with us, and I'm going to give you a little bit of her bio before we jump into our interview. So, Dr. Christina graduated from veterinary college in 1980 and began using homeopathy in 1982. It's so hard to believe that that was over 40 years ago. The 80s don't seem like 40 years ago.
They don't to me either.
She has spoken to thousands of veterinarians and anyone willing to listen on how to have healthy animals. After seeing the benefits of Reiki, she began encouraging every person to become trained in Reiki and to use it daily. While preventing illness with regular Reiki, she also found that people would then remember to use it for emergencies and illnesses. She is on the faculty of Holistic Actions and a panelist on Smart Pet Talk TV. She currently does virtual pet health advising, which is great for all of us, for ways to enhance health, increase joy, and even help the planet. And on a more personal note, Dr. Christina has been a friend to the Shelter Animal Reiki Association, I think probably since our inception in 2008. And we were so honored to have her featured in our book, Vets on Animal Reiki. And although Dr. Christina isn't trained in the Let Animals Lead method, we love Dr. Christina because she gives a different look at how to use Reiki in all different aspects of caring for your animals. And I'm super excited to have you here, Dr. Christina, to help us learn more about how we can use our Reiki skills to help support the animals in our lives.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here. Tell me again how long we've got.
It's usually about an hour, but sometimes with
Perfect.
the guest speakers, it goes a little bit over. So if you're
Okay.
willing, but
Oh,
if you have
always, I'm always willing.
okay, great. Because I know that there's a lot of people here who are super excited to be able to ask you some questions. So, and
Absolutely.
and please use the chat, everyone, so that I know to call on you when you have a question. If you could just drop it in the chat, if you can, that would be fantastic. So, Dr. Christina, let me turn it over to you.
Sounds great. So, first off, I really am so thrilled at the expansion of what Sarah is doing and moving into, now I'm drawing a blank, Let Animals Lead. And I'm sitting here looking at my purple sweatshirt that I thought to put on, but it was too warm in here to put it on. And because the biggest key to have animals be healthy is in the energetic realm. When I started homeopathy in the early 80s, and then diet and herbs, and I still, I didn't get it for maybe 20 years. And really it's been the last 10 years that more and more people at our holistic veterinary conferences, for instance, we're having speakers on scalar, quantum healing, animal intuitive, animal healing, virtual animal healing. So we are really finally starting to see that connection. At Holistic Actions, we have speakers every Monday night, and you have access to 7 years of them. And one of the speakers we had was Bernie Siegel. And Bernie Siegel wrote a book, Love, Medicine, and Miracles, back in, gosh, the 80s probably. And his thesis, his belief that he firmly lived from was all you need is love. Now, he was a pediatric oncologist, so he was injecting chemicals and all of that. And he felt they would only work if you were positive and if you were loving. And so more and more, and when he was 93 last year, he did a recording for us, which is on our YouTube. So that one's for free. Anybody can go to it. YouTube, Holistic Actions. Be sure to click on the subscribe or the I like you or whatever you do to help with YouTube. And I want to point this out because we often in a crisis forget. And like Leah said, if you're doing Reiki every day and if you're on these calls on a regular basis, if there's a crisis, you will remember to use Reiki and other energy healing if you want. And yet, still sometimes all of us forget. So after 20 years, 30 years, maybe more than that, of being probably more like, yeah, of being a pediatric oncologist, promoting love, showing that love made a difference. His family dog was ill, and he had 4 kids and about 25 animals in the house. The animals all ran loose. There were mice, pet snakes, pet cats, pet dogs, and I don't know, tons of other species. And they all got along together because that was what he and his wife and the kids said you have to do. You just have to love each other. So one day, one of his dogs was ill, and he took it to the veterinarian, and the veterinarian said, and I don't know what it was, but said, I'm sorry, it's time. You really need to euthanize your dog. And he said, okay. Now, you have to get who this guy was, right? And just this is to make all of us feel better when we make quick decisions without thinking about it. So he called home to tell the family to come down and say goodbye. And one of his sons answered the phone and he told him, and the son went, Dad, we don't do that in this house. Bring him home and we'll just love him. He lived another 4 years. So this is why I'm so passionate about Reiki is doing 2 things at once. It's helping your animals and it's helping yourself. The more grounded you are, the more positive you are, the less stressed you are, the less you're likely to leap to do what the conventional vets tell you, or a holistic vet tells you, or somebody else tells you, the better chance you have for your animals to live a long, healthy life. So you all are already so far along on the path that it's great. Now, in addition to the energetic and the spiritual and the emotional and the mental positivity, which is key, there are some physical things that help. So you don't have to do the react sort of thing. Just raise your actual hand. And how many of you are feeding kibble to your dogs? Oh, I like this group. How many? Okay. Thank you, Marilyn. How many are feeding kibble to your cats? Okay, a few. And how many of you are using a chemical flea and tick control? Okay. There's nothing right or wrong about this. It's just a matter of learning and expanding. So one of the things, as I talk about things today, you may go, oh my God, that makes total sense. Why haven't I been doing it that way? Don't feel guilty. Okay, that is because that's going to be a negative thought that you're having about you. And so that's not good for the whole world and for your animals. So regardless of what we say here, there is no one right answer. There was a cat behavior woman who had a listserv back in the late 90s, early aughts. And she firmly believed that cats needed free choice dry food because they were insect eaters and they needed food available all the time. And rather than jumping down her throat, I said, well, at one point I typed in, how long do your cats live? Her cats, and she had like 6 or so at a time. Her cats were living between 19 and 22 years. Okay. So see, it's good to have these different facts, these different opinions, so you don't get righteous about any one approach. There was a cat maybe 10 years ago, I lose track of time, who died in Austin, Texas. Any of you heard about this cat that lived to be 38? Okay, great. So Marley, I don't remember how long ago was it, but about that. And so that cat lived to be 38, and he had another one who was 34. Now, I wanted to pursue it and find him and talk to him and interview him, and I never did. But he was, I think, a plumber, and he had a backyard that was fenced in so the cats could go out sometimes there. But mostly he had taken a garage and turned it into a cat play heaven. And he played with the cats every night after he got home from work. Now, here's what he fed. He fed dry food with turkey bacon, some egg. Several times a week, he gave a dropper full of coffee to each cat and a dropper full of red wine to each cat because he had read about the resveratrol and he had read somewhere that coffee was good for you. So, okay, weird. I don't think it was the coffee that had the cat live to be 38. It was the interaction. But the point is, there is no one right answer. There's no one right diet, vaccine, treatment, whatever. And we're each on a soul journey. I mean, those of you who are working with shelters, you have to be there with an open heart and not be devastated when you hear the stories of the animals coming in. And you have to remember they've sort of chosen that. So there's no one right answer. Some come in and they're fine, regardless of their horrible history. Some come in and they have PTSD pretty badly. And that's, where Reiki can make such a huge difference. So first off, no one right answer. Now, let's talk about nutrition for just a minute. And I know there'll be tons of nutrition questions, and we'll cover most of it. The bottom line, again, is there's no one right diet. However, let's think species appropriate. I'll talk about dogs or cats, but it's true for horses and cows and pigs and all of that. And animals are quite wise about what they need. As a brief aside here, there's a Fred Provenza who's going to be lecturing for Holistic Actions next year. And he's a scientist at a university with livestock. And they did a study 20 years ago of feedlot cows that when they were brought off the pasture into feedlot, somebody figured out what nutrients and minerals and vitamins they needed. Half the cows were fed a mixture of that, and each cow was given like pills every day or something. The other half, they took the individual ingredients and put them in separate trays. The cows chose which minerals and vitamins they needed. Those cows, it cost, I'm making up the actual numbers here, but it's in the ballpark. It cost 25% less, and the cows got 25% more muscle on them. And yet feedlots didn't do that. I mean, why would they not do that? So we have to respect that our animals often know what they need, but not always. So what's the best food? The very best food for people and for dogs and cats is, number one, species appropriate. Number two, fresh. Number three, local. And as soon as you take off your hat that says, I have to make cat food, I have to make dog food, because then you go, that's hard. How am I going to do it? How do I balance it? Those pet food companies must know how to balance it. They don't. That food's not balanced. We see animals ill on commercial food a lot. So it's that common sense of where can I get fresh food? And it's local. Find a farmer who's doing humane with their animals. I just thought of this. Find a farmer who would love to give you a discount on your meat if you come out and do Reiki on their farm. You could Reiki the land, you can Reiki the animals, you can Reiki the plants. Hey, that's a cool idea. That's where the ingredients come from. Now, number two, of course, would be a health food store or the mini grocery stores that are selling locally raised meats. Your goal is to try to do that. And some people can't afford that, and that's fine. buy whatever you are eating yourself. Well, as long as you're eating fresh food. But price wise. Now, for feeding dogs and cats, though, you can save a lot of money. Cats, it doesn't matter so much. You're not going to ever have to spend a lot on feeding a cat, unless you have a whole lot, of course. But you can get what most Americans do not eat. In the wild, dogs have ripping and tearing teeth, bone crunching teeth, and little incisors that are used to gnaw the muscles and tendons that are left on great big bones. So we want to exercise those teeth. We want to feed pieces that are big enough that they can sink their teeth in it and go, and that gives them a chiropractic adjustment at the same time. We want to give them a big bone with stuff attached to it so they can gnaw on it. We want to give them bones, preferably chicken necks, turkey necks, depending on the size of the animal, chicken backs, ribs. So again, it depends on the size of the animal. Generally, it's best to feed raw in terms of bones. And that's what the mouth is designed for. And that will keep the teeth clean and the jaws strong. Doesn't matter what you're feeding. It could be rabbit, kangaroo, whatever's in your backyard. I didn't hear anybody from Australia signing in here. But, in Canada, it might be, I don't know, moose, elk, whatever's being hunted. And that's a way you can save money if you have big dogs or have large rescue, you're rescuing a lot of animals, is find the butchers who are butchering the hunted meat. You pay just the butchering fee, and you get all this wonderful meat that's been basically, grass fed. Because a lot of people like to hunt, but they just want a few choice steaks. They don't want the whole animal. So don't get it ground, get it in big chunks. And so that's a way to lessen the price. Now, you want to feed a variety. With cats, when you look species appropriate, cats were raised in the desert areas. They mostly ate meat, birds, mice, rats. So they were getting pureed vegetables, a little bit of them in the herbivore's stomach and intestine. So you want to puree vegetables for nutrition. You can give chunks of vegetables for fun and exercising teeth, like chewing on a carrot. Chewing on dry food doesn't ever help teeth because they don't chew on dry food. The cats did get other things because they were fed what was around. So they would get eggs, they would get milk, cheese. They would probably eat a little bit of carbohydrate, although cats aren't really geared for that. Now, the dogs have lived with people for a lot longer. And so they're adapted to eating a wide range of foods. They've adapted. They even have a gene now that sort of helps them digest carbohydrates. The species appropriate diet for a dog is mostly protein, meat, chicken, fish, eggs, dairy, all of those. Now, again, there's no one right answer. And there will be people who say cow's milk is only for cows. Okay, then don't feed cow's milk. There are plenty of other things you can feed. So whatever works for you, there is no magic number. I will say that goat's milk has something like 250 different bacteria for the microbiome. Whoa. And then if you ferment cow's milk, goat's milk, milk from horses, mare's milk, I just read yesterday, has a huge amount of microbes in it. So these are you can feed a much wider variety for dogs. And in the last, 5 years, about 15 years ago, there's a veterinarian, I think her website is Vegan Vet, and she's been promoting a plant-based diet for dogs and cats. And initially, I was like, no way, because everyone I knew who'd done that, their animals got sick and many of them died. But then Dr. Pitcairn's newest book is about feeding a plant-based diet to dogs and cats. And I've spoken with a number of the veterinarians trained by him recently, and they've had good results. However, it's not the normal natural diet. So if you want to do a plant-based diet, only do it with healthy, well, I shouldn't say that. They've actually had ill animals that they've switched to a plant-based diet and had them get better. However, because it's not the normal diet for them, if you're doing it on your own, I would only do it with healthy animals. And I would be keeping a journal. I wrote this book, The Healthy Animals Journal, 25 years ago, because people needed to be tracking symptoms. So here's the master symptom list. And always you look at energy, appetite, thirst, mood, behavior. And then you look for the early warning signs that there's an internal imbalance. And then you keep track of the symptoms. And I have it in ebook for cat and dog, or the print book that I mail out. And the key there is these early warning signs. And this is really important. And you can go on my website and just print off the list of early warning signs as well. And my website, ChristinaChambreau.com. So it's right there. Cats who vomit hairballs, dogs who need bathing because they have a doggy odor, problems with training. All of these are the clues that they're not really healthy. And yet those are things we say are normal. Oh yeah, some cats just vomit hairballs, so put them on a hairball gel. Nope. That means the internal energy field is out of balance. Now, sometimes Reiki will rebalance that. I need more stories, Leah, of where Reiki was the only treatment for whatever, so that I can state that more, with examples. Other times you need homeopathy, which is really good at rebalancing the energy field, or you need really good Chinese veterinary medicine, where you're doing acupuncture, Tui Na, acupressure, Chinese herbs. So those are all geared to rebalance the underlying energy field imbalance. And so once you have no more of these symptoms, and the energy level at age 16 is the same as it was when they were 4, you've done the right, you're going the right way. So whatever diet you choose to feed, you pay attention to those little clues, and you pay attention to what your animals like to eat or not eat, for several reasons. One is you'll know if they're not feeling well, what are their special foods that you can bribe them with to get them to eat? And number 2, you will not be in a pickle of the people who are feeding a raw food diet, but it's a commercial raw food diet, and their cat will eat just that one brand, and then they go out of business, or they sell it. And the ingredients change without the label changing. And that can happen with dry food and canned food as well. So the more variety they're getting, the better. There's a tendency now to have a lot of companies making raw foods and nutritional consultants, courses, certifications for how to make dog and cat food the right way. Those are good, but they're not critical, and they may be pushing you down one path. So be suspicious. Go ahead and learn from them. Take their courses, but don't say this is the only way. And be sure, post your nutrition questions in the chat, because we're going to move on from food at this point. And then I'll answer other questions as we go along as well. The second big area, so feed fresh, and all of you are nodding along. And those of you who aren't feeding fresh for whatever reason, post why not, and maybe how we can help you switch. And you all that are on this call on a regular basis can support each other. with
Absolutely.
supplements, with sourcing, with lowering the price, finding. I mean, here's one to lower the price. Those of you, again, with lots of animals. And I know some of you are going to flinch at this, especially the vegans, but still, when you have people raising chickens to produce eggs, when the hens have baby male chicks, they get killed immediately at like day 1 or 2, and they're just piled, and then they get just discarded. So I have people who actually buy those. They have whoever's doing it, they just pop them all in the freezer, and when they've got enough, they come out and they buy them. So they're getting an entire baby chicken to feed their dogs or cats. And so it's helping the planet. By the way, I'm profound into sustainability. And if you buy fresh food from a local farmer, that is the very best you can do. Well, raise it yourself is the best, but or buy it from a local farmer, because then you're not shipping food all around the world, have a plant that uses a lot of electricity, distribution, shipping it, all of that. So that really helps the environment. And the other reason for feeding a variety of foods is you're much less likely to develop any what people call allergies to foods. Food allergies are simply an imbalance in the vital force. So this is a shift for you all to continue to have this conversation about when you're talking about symptoms. Symptoms are rarely caused by anything external. All symptoms, allergies, food allergies, respiratory allergies, skin allergies, and any other symptom, most symptoms are caused by an imbalance in the energy field. So if you just address the symptom, the yucky ear, then you're temporarily helping. You're not rebalancing the energy field. So usually you're temporarily ameliorating the symptom and have to continue the treatment. Anytime you have to stay on one diet or stay on one supplement or keep doing the acupuncture or keep doing the homeopathic medicine, you are probably just temporarily helping or palliating. Now, sometimes with very old animals, very ill animals, that's the best we can do. But if they feel better, then you're probably moving towards a cure, even though you can't ever get to a cure because they're a little too old. So that's another piece to think about. So we could ask questions about tons of different companies and tons of different how they're preparing the food, lightly cooked, fresh food, subscription food. All of those are one of the many options on your platter. Stop for a moment anytime you're thinking about food for your animals and think about it in terms of yourself. My husband just did a subscription food thing. He likes to eat out, and I eat fresh, local stuff. And so we don't eat together. And he ordered one of these subscription foods. He didn't like most of them, so I'm ending up eating them. Now, is that the best food for me? It's fresh ingredients, but it's coming in a container with plastic over it, and it's been processed and it's fresh, but it's not the best, but it's also not the worst. So there's no one right one. You try it, you see what works. Often the subscription ones may be a little more expensive. So one of the ways if something you're doing isn't working is by noticing how the symptoms change. One of the things that causes a lot of problems are toxins. And vaccines have a lot of metals in them, heavy metals as adjuvants. Legally, you must stay current on rabies. And we can have a long discussion about this, but for now, we're just going to say legally stay current on your rabies, unless there's severe illness and you get an exemption written by your holistic veterinarian. Oh, by the way, How many of you, just put your hands up, how many of you have a holistic veterinarian on your team? Ooh, okay. So all the rest of you, you've got homework to do. Big homework to do quickly, right away. Don't wait. So the homework for you, and Trisha, if you can just post it in the chat, that'd be great. Your question in the chat. So you want to go to holisticactions.com/select. Leo put it in. And that's a free article about how come it's so hard to find one and how to find one. I've got all the websites, and I'm not going to waste time today on telling you how to use it. Read the article, go to those. Oh, thanks, Trish. And that's the other thing for you all to do on this is to share who your holistic vets are. Homeopathic veterinarians, there's a small percentage of them who do work virtually. So wherever you are, you can have a veterinarian. There are an increasing number of general holistic veterinarians who are doing virtual consulting. So there are other ones. We don't have those listed in that article. It's just sort of happening, and there's not a one place to go, but you can do a Google search on something like virtual holistic veterinarians. I actually pulled up a few of them by doing that. So vaccines, except for rabies, you never have to give them, number one. Or you give a few of them, maybe at 8 weeks and 16, to your young kittens and puppies. We don't do titers on ourselves to make sure we're vaccinated or have developed immunity. But if you want, you can do one titer, one for parvo, one for distemper, one for cat panleukopenia, when they're maybe 6 months old, 5 or 6 months old, regardless of how they've been treated. And that's just if you really, really need to know that. Other than that, don't waste your money on titers. They're not cheap. However, if you want to do something like a specific kind of a service dog and they will accept a titer in lieu of a vaccine, then that's the cost of showing, training, etc. But most of them don't. So avoid all the other vaccines. And if you have a holistic veterinarian on your team, which you will now quickly, support each other every week in checking in on that. Most holistic vets are integrative vets or were an integrative vet and now are doing just holistic. So there's a range. So there are acupuncturists who just do acupuncture, mobile acupuncture, and nothing else. And you have to have a conventional vet, and then you have to find one who's not going to yell at you that you're feeding fresh food diet and don't want to vaccinate. So that's going to be a whole nother process of finding your happy vet to work with. So if you're working with your holistic vet and people around you are saying, oh, there's a lepto epidemic going on, you have to vaccinate for lepto, well, call your holistic vet and talk about it. Have a conversation about that. Or if you're a Holistic Actions member, you post it on the forum. Or if you've been a advice client of mine, you can drop me a quick email. So there are multiple ways that you can get some guidance while you're advocating for your pets. So you want to avoid vaccines. You want to avoid other toxins, environmental toxins, house toxins. I bet most of you do. Flea and tick chemicals, yuck for most of them. Now, are they ever needed? Sometimes, very, very rarely. I had one woman with 6 beagles that she took through the woods on 5-hour hikes every day. And every single holistic thing we tried, she still got a ton of ticks. So during the tick season, she would use some chemicals. I forget what we did now. But she also carefully watched, and there was one beagle who was bothered by them, that she could appreciate the dog was bothered. So that dog, she picked all the ticks off when they came home. The other 5 were able to handle that. So it is one of the things I talk about in the article that your holistic vet needs to be willing to work with your conventional vet. but you have to find a whole conventional vet who's willing to be okay with you doing both. So that's it on toxins. That's easy. And again, if you have other questions, ask away in the chat. So now, oh, we already talked about that one. So let me just double check. Dale, I want to read what Dale said here. Part of the change. So for Dale, part of the change is convenience. Part is the supply chain for raw meat has been inconsistent. And it takes a lot of effort to make food batches. So before we run out of time, Dale, I'm going to talk about how to make it easy to cook food. And don't worry so much about the freshness of the meats. How have you ever, any of you, seen a dog go out in the woods or go along the road and drag home something that was pretty stinky, that had been dead a while, and they'd eaten a lot of it and they were fine. They weren't sick. And think about where else their little tongue goes. Butts, dirt. So they do fine. Don't worry about, really, you don't need fresh meat. Some people save money on meat by the rule of thumb is if the deer wasn't there when I left the house and it's there when I'm coming home dead by the side of the road, I take it home and butcher it. So, oh, good question. Heartworm preventative. So first, go to my website, read the whole article on heartworms, so you understand what is actually happening. And this will be really brief, but a positive dog, well, a mosquito gets born. The mosquito has to fly around until it finds a dog that has adult heartworms, therefore producing babies in the bloodstream, sucking up the babies, and then it takes 2 or 3 larval changes to get to the salivary gland to then, when it bites your dog, for those larvae to crawl around the skin, find the hole, and go into your dog. And if it gets cold during those 2 weeks of the larval changes, if it goes below maybe 60 degrees, there are a lot of different studies on this, then it inactivates the heartworm larvae. So if it's cold, they're not going to get it. I mean, I lied to all my clients in the early 80s. I didn't know better. I was in DC and they'd go, why do I need to give heartworm prevention in the winter? And it gets cold in DC. And I said, well, I mean, I see mosquitoes occasionally in the winter. So you have to do it once a month. And the other piece is, but that was wrong because it was so cold that they wouldn't have made it through that cycle. Now, a healthy dog, as those larvae crawl through the hole and then take up to 6 months to crawl and make adults in the heart, the body's going to go intruder alert. Let's kill those guys and send out lymphocytes and phagocytes and all of that and get rid of those migrating larvae. So most healthy dogs should be able to get rid of them. The second piece is the heartworm preventative is a morning after pill. It is not a preventative. It goes in, kills all the larvae, and then it's out of the body. Most dogs in my practice, I rarely saw a problem with the preventative. Vaccines, no. Heartworm preventative, yeah. If you feel more comfortable doing it, do it. Most of them you can give every 6 to 8 weeks. You don't have to give them every month. And again, just do it during the season. Just do it when there are a lot of mosquitoes around. So it's that common sense piece is what you want to do. So bottom line, avoid all vaccines except rabies. That's the bottom line.
I think the problem, Dr. Christina, the problem, I don't give my dogs heartworm, but I'm on the West Coast. We don't really have heartworm out here. But I think what happens is if like, let's say you give heartworm in the summer and then you don't give it in the winter, then the vets make you do another blood test and go through. And so it becomes expensive. So do we have to get a blood test every time we put our dogs on and off?
Well, that's a little tricky. Number one, if you're not using the heartworm preventative of all, and there's heartworms in the area, you should blood test twice a year. How much is a heartworm test these days?
I don't know. It's expensive on the West Coast to do it.
Really?
Yeah.
Anybody got a price? I mean, I used to charge $12, but that was a long time ago.
I don't think it's
I
such.
mean, it shouldn't be. Look around. There should be some. The other thing is everybody should get insurance when your dogs are young and don't have any pre-existing condition. And heartworm testing should be part of that. Because it takes 6 months for the babies to develop into the adult heartworms, if you're giving a preventative, it can kill the adults and cause some problems. So this is one of those areas where I recommend that you do it. Just test twice a year, regardless of how often you're using the heartworm preventative. If you're using it, use your common sense with it. There's no one right answer. But that's the reason that we say every 6 months that you have to do it before. Like if you've just missed 1 month and your vet says you have to retest, that's ridiculous. So it's based on the 6 months. Okay. Diatomaceous earth does not get rid of heartworms. Heartworms are not in the gut. Diatomaceous earth is for the skin and for the gut. So it can get rid of regular parasites. And going back to toxins, if you have puppies or kittens and they've got roundworms and they're young, or even hooks or whips and they're young, go ahead and use the conventional vet drug. Don't buy it in the store, although nowadays you can probably even get it good there. But Panicure, I don't know, I've been doing this a while, but the basic ones we're using now are quite safe. They don't seem to cause chronic disease, and you want to get rid of those bugs. Okay, so $50 for heartworm testing. Yeah. So again, don't have to do it all the time, but just sort of be cautious about it. Final thing on heartworm is we can treat them holistically. You just keep them healthy. If they're positive for heartworm, you don't have to go immediately to conventional treatment. Most homeopathic veterinarians say that within 2 years, they're clear. Now, they may need to be on preventative because you don't want them infecting other dogs. But you absolutely can treat them holistically. So you don't have to be as afraid of them as people thought. And Dale, I don't know if you were there, but making cat food, we talked about cats at the very beginning. And I'll go into at the very end, the actual down and dirty of how to make it, but it's so different. Yeah, when dogs come in with heartworm, again, if you've got a holistic shelter, a holistic rescue, they can be treated that way, but it is more difficult. So I haven't really worked with a shelter on, I don't know of any holistic vets that are sort of working on protocols for shelters that are getting a lot of heartworm positive dogs. That'd be something for you all to look into actually and start creating. So then the next chunk is one of the ways, remember I talked about moving towards a cure or palliating. The other thing that can happen is suppression. That's where you give a drug or a treatment, Reiki treatment or something else, and the symptom goes away quickly, but then they get more ill. And that happens. So think steroids, and then they get liver problems. Think Bravecto, and they get neurological problems. Or this new one, what's it called? It's for arthritis, and I'm drawing a blank on it. Librela, something like that. And then they get neurological problems from it. So those are examples in conventional medicine, but it can happen in any holistic, even with homeopathy. I had a dog who'd been itching for 3 years. I carefully selected the remedy. At the 2-week follow-up, she said, Dr. Chambreau, you're a miracle worker. She stopped itching like half an hour after I gave her the remedy. Well, immediately, so I want you all to put on your thinking cap a minute and think, we want the body to heal itself. The dog had been itching for 3 years. Is the body going to heal itself naturally in half an hour? No. So anything that's been long-term, a bee sting, sure, but not this. And after in-depth questioning, she finally said, oh, right. After about a week and a half, she started really being aggressive to the children. Well, that's suppression. The itch went away too fast and a mental symptom developed. So I figured a different remedy, including the aggression. And the aggression went away right away because it had just started. And the itching got better within 2 weeks, a little bit. And maybe it took 2 or 3 months before the dog was completely cured. Yes, Librela is recommended as last resort for arthritis. And there was another question earlier, I think, on arthritis. So it's the last resort for the poor conventional veterinarians who only have only have a few things they can offer. So the way to treat any condition is twofold. We've sort of been saying this all along, so it's good to repeat it for this. One is to rebalance the energy field, which then allows the body to naturally heal. And the second is at the same time to soothe the symptoms so the animal feels better. And so all of you, right now, say it, even if you're muted. What is the easiest thing you can do to soothe any symptom? Reiki! And you may need something else as well. I mean, we have many, many things you can do to soothe symptoms, but you do not need Librela, okay? So the key now is, how are we going to know if we're moving towards a cure, palliating, or suppressing? We have to know what's normal for our dog or cat. That means each one of you, needs to do a physical exam. And each one of you needs to train your dogs and cats to allow you to do a physical exam, which will make it a lot easier when they have to be done by a vet as well. Doesn't matter how long it takes you to train them. Almost every animal out there can be trained to let you look at its nose. Oh, I should have my bear over here. Look at its nose, look at the teeth, because you want to be able to clean the teeth off. We had a non-anesthetic dentist, and she said all you have to do to really clean dogs' teeth is use your finger. And then I asked my dentist, I said, why am I using toothpaste? Can't I just use my finger? She said, well, it usually tastes a little better if you're using toothpaste. So just rub their teeth, but you have to train them. You may have to train them. You want to train them to open their mouth to see, is there a long uvula? Is there a broken tooth? Is there a bunch of redness? You want to train them so that you can clean their ear, that you can wipe out their eyes, that you can take their temperature. You want to be feeling them frequently, depending on their age and health. Okay. I know there's little lumps here that are lymph nodes, and that's about how they feel. And then 2 years later, you've been doing this frequently, and you go, ooh, those are really big. Don't panic. It might have just been something, who knows what, temporary. But then you check it once a week and you see if they're getting smaller again. So you're getting familiar with what's normal, especially with cats. When you're checking their gums, you want to be noticing the color. Some cats just have pale gums, and others, they're sort of a normal red. And then there are some dogs, of course, that have pigmented gums, and you may not be able to do capillary refill on them. And you have to learn to do capillary refill, which is you push on the gum, and you can't see this here, I don't think, but you push on the gum and it turns white and then immediately turns pink again. Now that one didn't work. And that's how you can tell how the perfusion, how the blood system and the heart and everything is working, and are they shocky? So you need to learn these ahead of time. You want to palpate both of the legs, right and left at the same time, front and back, and make sure they're comfortable rolling over on their belly so you can look at their belly for fleas if you need, something as simple as that. So learning how to do a physical exam is important. At Holistic Actions, we even put together a heart health exam. And if you have a dog that's predisposed to heart problems because of the breed, they have Holter monitors. And they're even now developing, I don't go for this because it's just expensive and I don't necessarily think needed, but maybe it helps in the long run. They actually have a collar now that you can put on dogs and cats that's like what people wear around their wrist, and it continually monitors what's going on in their body. And once a day, it sends a signal to this big computer in the sky that warns you if there are problems happening. I mean, there's so many cool things out there. So with doing that, then whatever change you're making, whether it's for food or changing the amount of exercise you're doing. So between the early warning signs and the physical exam and all the symptoms that have ever been present in the past, you will be in charge. And so this helps you. So you've got two things now. One is you do Reiki. So anytime there's a crisis, do Reiki. Sometimes you have to rush to the vet, but most of the time you don't have to rush to the vet. People rush there way too fast and then start going down a tunnel. If you're concerned, don't hesitate. But hopefully you've got enough other resources. Do Reiki. And then check your journal and see, has this ever happened before? Is this on my symptom list? Oh, yeah, interesting. It happened last August at the same time. And now I know what I did to help it at that time. And then you work to rebalance the energy field so it doesn't keep happening. So that is really a key. Okay, so I've given you the most important pieces. So now we can go back and do a little bit about diet and any other questions. So
that would be great. So let's go back to the beginning. I know Carolyn Drew had a question, and you mentioned a vegan vet, and so I wanted to get that information to drop it in the chat. But Carolyn said, what about not eating other animals, and thoughts on plant-based food?
Right. Well, I did talk about that a good bit.
So who was the vegan vet though? That's what I wanted.
I'd have to do a search. Don't know it off the top of my head, but Dr. Pitcairn's newest book has it. But my recommendation is, again, be very, very cautious with that. There's a few veterinarians who are seeing good results with it, and then there are many of us who are seeing problems with it. It's just not it's not species appropriate. That's the bottom line. They weren't raised that way. They aren't genetically, and their teeth aren't set up for that. And so you have to be super. I would say to feed a vegan diet would take you 10 times as much work as it is to feed a species appropriate diet.
Okay. And on that, Mary Ellen asked, what kind of veggies are appropriate for cats?
Right. Anything.
Okay.
So there are on the internet, good question, because a lot of people get led astray by this for cats and dogs. On the internet are many ASPCA, American Veterinary, the AVMA, many places of people who should know better say that you shouldn't feed avocados. There's a commercial dry food called Avoderm.
Yeah.
It's made from avocados.
I know.
And so you have to really look at each of these with a jaundiced eye in terms of what they're saying. Garlic is safe to feed animals unless you try to force a whole pod, not a clove, a pod of garlic into a cat or a Yorkie. Then you might if they're sensitive, have a problem. It might trigger the energy field to go out of balance, causing a problem. There you go. Dale's cat loves avocados.
Yeah.
And so feed avocados. That's great. And dogs veterinarians who are in avocado country say they see dogs all the time eating avocados, the skin, probably not the pits, but even chewing on the pits. What I have read is that the skin and the pits could be a problem. So if your dog's already doing it, don't worry about it. But in general, I would just feed the avocado meat and nothing else. Onions, garlic, fine, feed it. That actually helps in multiple ways, including sometimes helping prevent fleas. Onions, don't worry about a small amount of onions. Like if you're feeding some leftover fried rice and it had onions in it. However, I would not put a large amount of onions in when you're making your veggie mixture. So I would tend to stay away from that.
My
Grapes.
Sharpay got very sick over onions because my ex-husband just gave him a bite of his burrito and it wasn't loaded with onions, but he got pretty sick when we took him to the vet. The vet said, yeah, he probably had a reaction to the onions.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. And again, it would be a trigger pushing his energy field off balance, because that would be a symptom that he was not healthy, that he couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
Because they should be able to handle the amount of onion in a burrito, unless it
wasn't a large amount. So that always scared me. So we've talked about allergy.
Hang on one sec. What onions do, I don't know whether it decreases calcium or not. I have no idea. But what onions and garlic are supposed to do is create Heinz body anemia. That's the problem that they create.
Ah, okay. And that could have been, it was so many years ago, I can't remember.
Yeah.
Now I know you talked about and you can go back and listen because she did touch on some subscription foods. You talked about that, about fresh.
Yep. And then the other one they asked was, so let me continue with what's okay to feed.
Yeah.
So grapes is another one that most of us go, I don't know, we fed grapes for decades, for centuries. And I'm sure the Romans were feeding their dogs grapes and cats if they wanted to eat it. And yet then we had all these poisonings happen with kidney toxicity from the grapes. And so we said, don't feed grapes. And those of us holistic went, I'm sure that was because it was the chemicals that were sprayed on the grapes. And then this one family's dogs ate the grapes off their arbor and they hadn't used pesticides. And so then we went, okay. So maybe avoid grapes, but don't panic about grapes. The only one to really sort of panic about is dark, expensive chocolate.
Yeah.
That can cause, it's got high theobromine and it can cause some heart problems. So I would stay away from chocolate. But your typical chocolate chip cookies, a little bit of chocolate here and there, don't panic. It's fine. A friend of mine had a 5-pound toy poodle who ate a 1-pound fundraising chocolate bar, paper, aluminum foil, and chocolate, and had no symptoms at all. So chemicals you do want to stay away from, like xylitol, of course, antifreeze, all those sorts of things. So nowadays you have to be very careful. There's been a little flurry on the internet about peanut butter now has xylitol in it, but I checked out and I couldn't find many brands that were using that. I think that was one of those sort of internet.
Maybe the sugar-free peanut butter, because in the regular, whether it's organic or Jif or Skippy, there's no xylitol. So maybe it's the sugar-free.
Sure. So it's just important. And again, a small amount of it isn't going to cause a problem. So you don't want to panic immediately. And I think those are most of the ones to avoid. In terms of what to feed, then, is anything else. And every animal is different. So there we go. Dale's cat loves avocados. So here's the key about feeding. We want to feed variety, okay? And you're going, so I'm going to go shop for my dog and or cat, and I'm going to get different things every day. And then I'm shopping for myself, and I've got my teenagers that each eat different things. Oh, too much work. Wait a minute, you're shopping for yourself. Unless you're a vegan, and a little bit of so if you're a vegetarian, whatever you're getting to eat is what you feed your animals. So you're feeding a roast chicken to your family tonight for dinner, and you have a 20-pound dog or a 40-pound dog. So what you do is the chicken breast and the chicken legs are for the family, and the rest of the carcass is for the dog. And you'd give a quarter of it if it's like a, I don't know, 40-pound dog or so. You'd give half of it if it was like a 80-pound dog. And they'd get the whole carcass. They'd get the meat, the bones, raw bones, all of that. And then for vegetables, you keep a food processor sitting by your sink. You're prepping your vegetables, and the carrot has that gooey, it had a gooey hole in it. So you put that in the food processor. You put the carrot greens in the food processor. You put the hard part of the broccoli and the asparagus in the food processor. Then you cook the vegetables and you pour that into the food processor, the water after it's cooked. Then you eat your vegetables and you add the cooked vegetables left over to the food processor. If you have a 80-pound, 120-pound dog, then you're going to have to cook for an additional adult in the family. So you need to buy an extra chicken. You need to cook some vegetables if you want to do a mixture. So there's no doing it exactly this way, but that's how to make it easy. Now, dogs and cats need organ meat. People don't, in the US, most people aren't eating organ meat. So you do have to do a little extra shopping. But that's true if you have a teenager who's into sports and you have to shop extra meat for them, or somebody with et cetera. So you can integrate it into your family shopping. And preferably you're doing it from local sources, if at all possible. And that's how you save money. At the end of the day at the farmer's market, they're practically giving away things. And especially if you get in a relationship with them. Maybe you can find out when and if they're butchering, some of them butcher locally, and you can get the cast-offs. The other thing that's important, if you're using homeopathy and possibly with Chinese medicine as well, if you're offering a wide variety of things to your animals, keep track of things they hate, not dislike, hate. Ooh, things they love. Ooh, she's doing that. The standard poodle on the 4th floor in the house would run downstairs when they opened up the butter dish in the fridge, the butter drawer in the fridge. That's craving butter, because those can help decide what homeopathic medicines are needed. Now, I didn't talk much about cooked food. Food can be cooked or not cooked. The idea of feeding cooked bones is because I lectured to 200 veterinary technicians. And when I got to bones, there was this big gasp in the audience. The whole room gasped. And I said, how many of you have seen problems with bones? Most hands went up. I said, how many of you know that the problems were with raw bones? And 2 hands went up. But the cooked bones that they're talking about, and I don't do this when I'm talking on radio or TV. You guys are a privileged group here, because I know you know. And by the way, hi, Kristen. So if you've made a soup and you've cooked the bones for hours, those are fine. What doesn't work is when somebody has a chicken leg, a fried chicken leg, and they eat all the meat off of it, and then it gets thrown in the trash and it dries out. Or it's a work site and it gets thrown on the ground and it dries out. In the wild, they're not going to be seeking out bones that don't have any meat on them. So if you occasionally get a cooked bone, it's usually not going to be a problem. And some dogs thrive on it. I know a 14-year-old husky, and I was at a picnic with them at their house, and somebody was offering him chicken wing, a whole chicken wing cooked. And I went, you might want to check with the owner. And the owner went, oh, yeah, we do that all the time. So there are no hard and fast rules. That's really the bottom line. And yeah, many animals will choose what they want from the garden to eat, like the cherry tomatoes. And so sometimes you have to keep them out of the garden if you want, the two of you may fight for the food. Fish is fine. Fish, any protein source. But again, think, is this a Chesapeake Bay retriever who really is raised around fish? Yeah, then you really want to do fish. Is this a sheep herding dog that never ever, or a desert dog that's never seen a fish in its life? Probably, it's fine to do fish, but you might not want to emphasize that. But on the other hand, you might want to try. Who knows what's odd about the genetics that shows that? So pay attention to what works and what doesn't work. And the key is making it easy. And hopefully for Dale and the person early on who wanted to know how to make it easy, hopefully that will make it easy, who sort of stopped because it was hard. And again, if you really are stuck and you really want to feed fresh food, schedule a pet advising appointment with me and I'll help you. Or if you're if you're a Holistic Action member, you can post in the forum and read for free. You can read our forum. You can put in feeding, diet, and you'll get all sorts of people's questions and how we answered them. All right, I can keep going, but
Dr.
where
Christina,
are we?
so I'm gonna put your website in there. Now, do they
Right.
book a consultation with you on your personal website, or can they do that on Holistic Actions, or where is best?
Two separate things. Holistic Actions is a educational empowerment site, and members do get a 15-minute consult as part of their membership or a discount on it. And that's all Holistic Actions. And then Dr. Jeff has a virtual homeopathic practice, Dr. Jeff Feynman. Myself, I do the pet health advising now. I stopped being the vet when I turned 65. And so you come straight to me, but type in my email, healthyanimals@aol.com. That's you can get to me through my website as well. And it's good to see, you can see what I do, but you can also email me. And again, if you have a quick question, go ahead and email me and just say you're part of Sarah or Let Animals Lead or whichever.
Well, thank you. This has been so informative, especially the part about the bones, because it makes so much sense. Because I've been around, I mean, I'm 60, so we grew up in the era where you gave dogs bones, but it was right after, like, as you're eating dinner, right? So right. You're throwing chicken bones to a dog, like my dad used to do that, and my grandma used to do that. But it was as you're eating, you throw it to them, so it's not dried, it's not hard. And so I think that was really nice to get that explanation, because I think some of us are like, well, then, why did so many dogs not get sick during that time? And then another thing I wanted to say, well, first of all, I love how non-judgmental you are and how you make it so easy for all of us to do this at our own pace, which is why I love Holistic Actions. And I encourage everybody to go and check out their membership, because Gail's a part of that also, Gail from Bright Haven. But I wanted to say about the dog food situation, about feeding kibble. My partner Michael, they had a border collie and she died at 22, and she got, it was like something like Purina kibble. It wasn't great kibble.
Right.
Years, but they had what's called a deer camp, right? So out in the woods, that the dad would take Puppy, her name was, out when he would go stay for the weekend out at his deer camp. And so out at deer camp, though, that's where Puppy could go swim in the pond. She could self-select, roll in the grass, do all those things. And I really think that's what kept Puppy healthy, was having that ability to then go out in nature, right?
And probably some good genetics as well.
Right.
I did want to, back to the fish, I did want to go back and say, Dr. Jean Hovey, who's on our faculty, and some other vets don't like to feed fish to cats, whereas others of us, me included, feel fine feeding fish to cats. So, and then the one thing I did not say, oh, this is good. I'm so glad I thought of it. Everybody, the one thing that we all agree on, remember I said everything goes, the one thing we all agree on is you have to be feeding calcium to balance the phosphorus in the meats. So you're either feeding bones that are edible, like chicken wings, chicken nuts, whatever, not a big femur that they're just gnawing on, or you do eggshells, bone meal, or algae from calcium from algae. So you do have to do that. And number two is it seems that taurine is a very inexpensive supplement.
Mm-hmm.
And cats particularly need taurine. It's super good in heart meat, but it's not. And so if you're feeding heart meat on a regular basis, and you can get freeze-dried hearts, which a lot of cats love to eat. And if you have an animal who will only eat one type of protein, like will only eat fish or will only eat chicken, then that is not a healthy animal. They probably have some imbalances going on in their energy field and or they've been spoiled. So you need to really work to have multiple sources, because imagine if all you ever ate in your life was fish twice a day. Do you think you'd be getting the right nutrient profile for yourself? Even if it were, I'm eating, I don't know, some holistic health food, fish stew that has everything you're supposed to need in it. If you ate that twice a day, you still wouldn't be as healthy as if you ate a wider range. So you just have to dig into that. So that was for Marilyn. Okay, anything else I missed?
I think that was, well, we have to let you go, and you and I still have to have a little role too.
Yep.
So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us and for supporting this beautiful session with Dr. Christina. And Dr. Christina, thank you so much. This was so eye-opening and informative. I love that. And I can't thank you enough for coming and speaking to our community and helping support us as we try and support our animals, because we all love our animals dearly. So thank you so much for this.
Absolutely. And I just, my heart is full of joy for every one of you because of what you're doing. And so, kudos, hats off, everything, meows and barks to you.
Thank you so much. All right, everyone. Thank you for coming, and we'll see you next week. Bye.